Hello everyone. First of all, an apology because this is really last Friday's sermon. Got delayed due to technical problems, but it's still applicable and we'll still do the prayers that we do every week. So we're going to start with Psalm 121, which we'll sing together. If you've got a singers, it's page 510 in the back. And we'll have in mind all those who are unwell and in need of salvation. Shalom Alois, Eso Einay Elhemorim, Meyayin Yavoy Ezri Meyim Adonai, Oise Shamayim Vo'oves, Al Yitei Lamei Draglecha, Al Yanov Shoim Re'echa, Hine Lo Yanum V'Lo Yishan, Shoyme Yisroel, Adonai Shoymerecha, Adonai Tzilcha, Yad Yaminecha, Yoimam Hashemesh Lo Yakeka, V'yorei Yafal Laila, Adonai Yishmorecha, Mikora Yishmores Nafshecha, Adonai Yishmor Tzeichol Loyecha, Me'ata V'Adonai. So, Mishaber, for those who we know are unwell, please add your own names of people that you wish to pray for, or let us know so we can add them in the future. Mishaber, Hamzim Jacobish, as Chanuk Ben Blimalavias, Yetul Ben Mimus, my thank you special. Yes, Ben Sion, Azari, Yunus of Shimashu, Ben Leoni. Es Dr. Ben Chalabeinu, yes, Chaim Tuvit, Dr. Ben Chalea, es Moshe Ben Fredo, Veshem, Zaman Ben Chanaliba, yes, Ben Pauline, es Shlomo Ben Mindo, yes, Jonas Ben Miriam, yes, Mordechai David Ben Silvis, Yaakov Ben Miriam, yes, Michal Ben Henya, yes, Jonas Ben Sorbi, yes, Cassio Ben Fredo, yes, Brooke, Michal Ben Rachel, yes, Baruch Ben Tobachayim, yes, Ruben Ben Chama Esther, yes, Yehuda Ben Caleb, yes, Yirmiyahu Ben Sorbi, yes, Yitzhak Ben Chana, Sam Shag Ben Sarah Tavoyra, yes, Yitzhak Isaac Ben Yehuda Rachel, es Pesach Ben Shane Gita, es Nosson Ben Shavi, es Ben Marcus, es Ben Taiva, es Ashim Asad Ben Sherbe, es Moshe Ben Shivrachim, es Chaim Eliyahu Ben Perel, yes, Chaim Chaikum Ben Chana, yes, Orit Bas Savim, yes, Miriam Bas Neta, yes, Chana Bas Tavarim, yes, Esther Bas Racham, yes, Francis Bas Herschel, yes, Leah Bas Kermis, Yehovah Bas Sormis, Rebbe Bas Kita, yes, Mash Bas Yacha, yes, Shamas Bas Chalil, yes, Yudis Bas Peila, yes, Shane Bas Sormis, Chana Bas Tavarim, yes, Krishna Badi Ben Chanina, Avoshem Rusaka Baburam, is Chazek Shbakim Akim Akim Abes and Achazik Achayosam, Ishlach Lem Erfushim Shram Chogim Choginem, Sashachan Sur for Nefesh Rusakov, Hashtag Nazman Karim, Anaymar Amen. Wish long life to those with Yortzeit this week. Did say the prayer yesterday, and I'll say it again today. This being recorded Sunday night to include those who had Yortzeit yesterday. So yesterday, Shabbos, Reva Cohen had Yortzeit for her husband, father of Michael. Paul Groman Marks had Yortzeit for his father. Stuart Myers for his mother. Reverend Stuart Myers for his mother. Rachel Palmer for her father, and Adrian Shine for his father. On Sunday, David Bernstein for his mother. That's today. Lee Gabriel for his mother, and Jackie Steinberg for her mother. On Monday, Tony Gilbert for his father. Stanley Kay for his father. Stuart Lewis for his wife. Evelyn Sana for her brother. Carol Schneider for her father. Adrian Shine for his mother. On Tuesday, Alan Murray for his grandmother, Jeff Saltman for his mother, Edna Sinclair for her father, and Brett Wexler for his mother. On Wednesday, Linda Frankel for her mother, and Julian Rainsby for his mother. On Thursday, Betty Friedman for her husband, Amanda Green for her husband, Danielle Levine for her father, Beverly Markovich for her sister, Gregory Nathan for his father, Deborah Newman for her mother, Diane Shear for her father, Claire Brandt for her mother, and Jeffrey Windish for his father. On Friday, Malcolm Klein for his mother, Martin Harris for his father, Dawn Jacobs for her father-in-law, Kay Lester for her father, Graham Mann for his father, and Bernice Van Lowen for her mother. Wish him a long life. Chaim Aruchim. El Rachamim, Sheikhem Vamreivim, Hamatzei Menuch, Manachayat Arazmei Shechina, V'ma'alois Kedeshim Terim, Gezakim Ma'aseh Ben Mes, Nishmas Rufredet Ben Tzvi HaKohen, Es Yaakov Ben Moshe Ves, Esther Bas Meir Ves, Shlomo Ben Yitzhak, Es Yaakov Meir Ves, Tobit Rabas David Yehuda, Rest by Ryan Dobas Herschel Chaim Ves, Yehuda Ben Meir, Sarah Leben Mesh Ben Chasalevi, Yes, Roch Bas Berel Levi, Yes, Ephraim, Yes, Rabas Yaakov, Yes, Emmanuel Ben Avram, Yes, Chava Bas Avram, Yes, Beir Rivka Bas Hashem David, Es Nasa ben Shlomi, es Pinchas, es Pinchas Yosef, es Isis ben Mocha Levi, es Sheni bas Levi, es Moshe ben David, es Yitzhak ben Yosef, es Yosef ben Yehuda, es me Alexander ben David, Shlomi ben Avram, es Mark ben Safran, Shachol Loina Maman Malachim, as the name is Isaac and Mami Oilamim, Yitzhak ben Tzachar, es Ishmazon, Loina Chlasam, and Yosef Shomer, Yishkvei Sam, the Neymar, Amen. In yesterday's Torah reading Toldos, we read about our forefather Yitzchak Isaac, and we were told that he planted seeds which ultimately yielded fruit, produce 100-fold. Mea Sha'arim. This is where the phrase comes from, 100-fold, which is the name of the neighborhood in Jerusalem, very Orthodox neighborhood, Mea Sha'arim. So Yitzchak, our forefather, did he really have nothing better to do all day than to plant seeds? Did he not study Torah, do good deeds, look after his children? Twins, after all, can be a handful. Why did he go out to work in the fields to plant seeds? Okay, maybe to provide for his family. But we know he had servants, he was wealthy. He sent them to dig his wells. What was he doing out in the field, working, planting seeds? And the answer is found in a famous dispute in the Talmud. The great sage, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, once lamented that the Jews waste their time working in the fields, because if they spend all day at work, who will study the Torah? Rabbi Shimon suggested that we should study Torah all day long, and God will provide for us. Rabbi Ishmael disagreed. He said, study in the morning and evening, and work during the day. The Talmud then notes that many tried the approach of Rabbi Shimon and failed. Many tried the approach of Rabbi Ishmael and succeeded. To put it simply, not everyone can place their trust in God and just spend their day in study. Baal Shem Tov taught that there are those who are blessed with absolute faith, and they can sit back and trust God to provide for them. But these are exceptional individuals, the exceptions are the rule. Most of us regular people, we're not comfortable with gambling our future on faith. We're expected to help ourselves, and then God will bless our efforts with success. We're expected to go out to work to earn a living. Rabbi Shimon and others can place their trust in God implicitly. But, says the Talmud, most people can't. The reason most people go down Rabbi Ishmael's path is because they don't have that purity of faith of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That doesn't sit so well in terms of our faith in God. And so our patriarch Yitzchak, Isaac, who foresaw this, didn't sit back and let this go unanswered. He, more than Abraham and Jacob even, stood up for us. Let's see how. The Talmud also tells us that before the Messiah, before Mashiach comes, God will be looking for someone to speak up for the Jewish people. He will approach Abraham and tell him his children have sinned. Abraham will dash God's hopes, because he will reply that if they sinned, then they deserve to be punished. He will tell Yaakov, Jacob, who suffered much anguish over his own children, in the hope that he will stand up and defend us. But he too will say, look, if they've sinned, you, God, should punish them. Then the Talmud says God will turn to Isaac and complain that his children have sinned. Isaac, says the Talmud, will mount a vigorous defense of us. He will say, dear God, are they my children and not yours? When you gave them the Torah, and they replied that they would follow it and they would listen. Naaseh Ishmael, you declared them your son, your firstborn. Now that they sin, suddenly they're my children, not yours. No, God, they're your children. And Isaac will say, you know what, God, says the Talmud. Let's say we live for 70 years. We're not punished for the sins we commit during the first 20 years of our lives. That's our youth. That leaves 50 years. Deduct the nights when we are sleeping. That leaves 25 years. Deduct at least half that time for prayer, for eating, providing for our basic needs. Leaves 12 and a half years of sin. God, can you not tolerate 12 and a half years out of 70? Isaac will then conclude, dear God, if that's not enough, then forgive their sins. Atone for them in the merit of my having been raised upon the altar as a sacrifice. When God hears this defense, says the Talmud, he will relent and he will bring the Mashiach. This vision teaches us that it is Isaac, more so even than Abraham and Jacob, who was committed to our honor and our defense. Knowing his children were exposed as lacking faith, as not able to rise to that level of complete trust and dependence on God, he didn't sit back and let it slide. He got up and he worked the field for himself. He had plenty of workers who could have done this, but he wanted to make a point. Dear God, he was saying, don't suspect that my children, my descendants who work for a living lack faith. I too work for a living, and you know I trust you implicitly. If I can trust you and still plant, as a matter of principle, so can they. And then the Torah tells us that Isaac's success was 100 times greater than projected, 100-fold. The Midrash tells us his field was not on fertile land. There was a terrible famine in the region that year. Everything was stacked against him. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Midrash says people would see him working the land and they would laugh at him. You're wasting your time. They would think the yield would be minimal. And yet he exceeded their expectations 100-fold. This is very instructive to us as well. We are a generation in exile from our Holy Land. When the temple stood in Jerusalem, when we lived in our land, we saw the hand of God in our everyday lives. People would see that good deeds were rewarded, bad deeds were punished. The prophets communicated messages directly from God. We were taught Torah by wise teachers of wisdom. We could enter the temple. We could feel and sense God's presence. When a person is like that, they connect with God spiritually. They're not concerned with material things. Compared to that, what we do is nothing. We study Torah for an hour and we claim it as a great mark of pride. We go to shul once a week, once a month, once a day, 3 times a day. We think we're doing such a great thing. We give a small amount to charity and we feel like we've changed the world. Compared to our forebears, it doesn't seem like very much. And the diaspora compared to Israel is hardly a fertile spiritual ground. Our time, unlike the time of our forefathers, is a time of spiritual famine. In that sense, we are like Isaac. Wrong place, wrong time. And yet, just as he succeeded, against all odds, so do we. Because the Midrash teaches us that if you study Torah when you're wealthy, and you then become impoverished, you should continue to study Torah. Why? Because good deeds under harsh conditions are 100 times more precious to the Almighty than good deeds under prosperous conditions. I'll say that again. When we do things under duress, under difficult conditions, it is 100 times more powerful than when things are easy for us. Isaac wanted us to know that yes, we may do less than our forefathers, but what we do, even the little that we do, is precious to God because of the obstacles we have to overcome to achieve it. One of our good deeds is worth 100 of theirs. Not only did Isaac comfort us with this concept, but he made sure it would be in the Torah to be ratified by God. In God's own words, Isaac mounted a defense of us that even God himself cannot overcome. And so with all the challenges we face, we hear a lot about how every generation is further away, we do less. People are more ignorant, there's less knowledge, there's less commitment, there's less affiliation, there's less engagement. All that may be true. On the other hand, though, each generation is more challenging. We live in a spiritual desert. We live in the diaspora. We don't live in places where holiness is felt. And we live in very difficult times as well, as we know. With all of that, even the little things we do are magnified and multiplied 100-fold. Let's always remember that. Just like Yitzchak, when he planted his seeds against the odds, he was rewarded 100-fold. So when we plant in times of difficulty, times of famine, in harsh conditions, so also the yield is 100-fold. It really, really makes a difference, everything that we do. I wish everyone a Shavua Tov, a wonderful week, and hopefully next week's sermon will be on time on Friday. Take care. Have a good week.